continue to stand by. Your conference will begin momentarily. Again, please continue to stand by. Your conference will begin momentarily. Thank you. continue to stand by. Your conference will begin momentarily. Again, please continue to stand by. Your conference will begin momentarily. Thank you. Welcome and thank you for standing by. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. All participants will be on listen-only mode for the duration of the call. During the question and answer period, if you would like to ask a question, please press star 1. Thank you. You may now begin, Joshua Finch.
Good evening and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Josh Finch of NASA's Office of Communication. We're here to discuss NASA's SpaceX Crew-3 mission, the third crew rotation flight, the SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft on a Falcon 9 rocket to the International Space Station. Teams from NASA, SpaceX, and more just completed a launch readiness review for NASA's SpaceX Crew-3 mission, and here to talk more about that, we have Steve Stitch, Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Joel Montalbano, Manager, International Space Station Program at NASA, Jennifer Buckley, Acting Chief Scientist, International Space Station Program at NASA, Holly Ridings, Chief Flight Director, Flight Operations Director at NASA, Sarah Walker, Director of Dragon Mission Management at SpaceX, Frank DeVena, Program Manager, International Space Station at ESA, and William Ulrich, the Launch Weather Officer from the 45th Weather Squadron, United States Space Force. We'll start with opening comments, then go to questions. So first, I'll go to Steve Stitch.
Okay. Thanks, Josh. It's been an exciting time down here in Florida getting ready for the Crew-2 launch. We just wrapped up the launch readiness review, and we're go to proceed toward the next events toward the launch on 10/31 on Sunday. I will give a little background of what's happened since the FRR. We rolled the vehicle out to the launch pad, the Falcon 9 and Dragon, on Tuesday, and then really late Wednesday evening, we tested the first stage of the Falcon 9. We fired all 9 engines on the Falcon 9, and those engines all looked good. It's a great way to shake down the launch vehicle and make sure everything's really ready to go. We loaded it with propellants on both the first and second stage, and all that checked out well. And it's also a good check of the launch pad and all those systems as well. Then on Thursday, we worked around a little bit of weather here in the KSC area, but we went and did what's called a dry dress with the crew. And that's kind of an end-to-end dress rehearsal where the crew starts in crew quarters and they get in their suits, and then they go out to the launch pad, and then the SpaceX team puts the crew in the vehicle, and we go through that whole end-to-end timeline. It's a fairly tight timeline, and that went really well, and you could tell that the crew and the SpaceX teams were well prepared for the launch. And so we did that on Thursday. And it was good for me to see Raja. Raja worked for us in commercial crew as we were getting ready for the Demo 2 flight. He was responsible for leading a joint test team with the display system and getting ready to go. At the same time, we're getting ready to fly Crew-3. This is really about handing over the crews and so on orbit. Endeavor's getting ready to go as well. We have checked the thermal protection system. We do an inspection with the external high-definition cameras on the space station and also the robotic arm. We go look at the thermal protection system, and that vehicle has been cleared to return for entry. So we know that the TPS is good, and the crew on orbit also checked out their spacesuits, and we've started to check that vehicle out, getting ready to prepare for undocking after the handover is complete. Coming out of the FRR, we had 2 areas that we needed to go do a little bit more work on. One of those was reviewing the waste system changes on the Crew-3 vehicle on the Dragon that's here at the launch pad. And NASA has reviewed that system and the qualification and the testing, and that system's ready to go. And so we'll have a good waste system on the Crew-3 vehicle. And at the same time, we also had more work to do to close out the readiness of the vehicle on orbit as well, Endeavor. And we went and reviewed the structure and all the analysis, and that vehicle is good to come home as well. And we approved that at the Dragon Mission Management team yesterday on Thursday. So the vehicles are doing well. The only thing we're really watching as we get close to launch is the same thing that we always talk about, weather, and we'll hear a little bit more from the launch weather officer, but the weather here in Florida is looking pretty good. We're watching the weather up the coast a little bit. This vehicle has an abort capability to abort all the way from the launch pad all the way into orbit, and so we've got to make sure that the weather conditions are acceptable in that ground trek up the East Coast, and that's the only thing we're really watching as we prepare for launch. And with that, I'll turn it over to Joel Montalbano.
Thank you, Steve. as Steve said, we finished our launch readiness review. Onboard space station, it's been a pretty busy week. In addition to the utilization and research, we've done some system work. Specifically, Mission Control Center Moscow has done a test of the multi-purpose laboratory module roll thrusters, a successful test this week. We've also had by Roscosmos a launch of a Progress vehicle, and about 2 hours ago, a successful docking of that vehicle to the aft end of the service module. So again, just another busy week on board the International Space Station. Once Crew-3 launches, it'll be in free flight just over 20 hours, and it will dock to the forward port of the International Space Station. It will stay docked approximately 6 months, and with a successful launch and docking, we'll have the Crew-2 returning on November 4th, and just from an outstanding mission of utilization and research, technology development, and low Earth orbit commercialization activities on board. But we'll continue that work with the Crew-3. This November, specifically November 2nd, we will celebrate 21 years of continuous human presence on board the International Space Station, and the efforts across the globe from our international partners as well as our domestic partners have proven just to be an outstanding effort, and you see the benefits of that, again, across the globe, and we're excited to continue that work. With that, just a huge thanks to everyone involved on the Commercial Crew Program, our international partners, the space station team for making all these missions a huge success. So with that, let me hand it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, and good evening. It's my pleasure to be here to talk about some of the science ongoing on Space Station, as well as what Crew-3 will be doing when they get to orbit. When Crew-3 arrives, they will be supported by our Regen ecosystem. So I want to mention today we hit a big milestone here with our closed-loop life support system. We have been doing a tech demo on ISS. It has been years in the making, and today we have 7 different systems running for our life support system. So it's a very exciting time for us in ISS utilization. For Crew-3, along with the crew, we're going to be launching 73 kilograms of science and utilization on the vehicle. We're going to be bringing up a couple investigations I'd like to highlight that are first time and new investigations to ISS. One of those is the ESA Easy Motion investigation. So this is an electromyostimulation bodysuit. And the idea behind this is they're going to be testing to see if that extra stimulation that the crew has through this bodysuit while they're exercising improves outcomes in muscle tone. We're also going to be bringing up the SVGS investigation. So this is a smartphone video game guidance system. It's actually not run off of a smartphone. It's testing software that is used in that context on our Astro Bee. These are our robotic free flyers, free-flying cubes on ISS, and they're going to be testing about 5 different algorithms using targets for different navigation-based algorithms that can be used in future exploration. They're also going to be bringing up the host pathogen investigation, which is a new one coming to ISS. Host pathogen is going to be looking at the crew member's immune system pre-flight, during flight, and post-flight. And they will be doing a series of bacterial challenges with the T cells isolated from these crew members for both bacteria grown here on the ground and on orbit. So this is a really interesting one we have. Food physiology will also be starting. This is where we're going to be evaluating special foods for the crew, as well as some food choices that they have to take a look at how that impacts crew health, as well as the human microbiome. And one of the highlight investigations for this mission is our UPCG, Uniform Protein Crystal Growth investigation. So this one is going up on Crew-3 and coming back on Crew-2. This investigation is looking at really fundamental biology and taking a look at RNA switches, basically, that are turning on and off gene expression from RNA coding into different products. So So this is, as I mentioned, a really fundamental and exciting new type of investigation that is new here on the ground, and we'll be doing it in space for the first time. Coming back with UPCG on Crew-2 is also going to be Veg-03, which is some lettuce leaf samples, as well as a number of human research samples. And with that, I will hand it over to Holly Ridings.
All right, well, thanks, Jennifer. I really appreciate it. Getting ready to launch 4 humans into space is an immersive experience. And so, you heard Joel and Steve talk about all the great things that have been done this week. And so to focus, for just a minute on the crew themselves, they came in on Tuesday after we'd updated you on Monday. Their families came in after that. And so, they've had a great week getting ready. Specific to them was the dry dress event that Steve Stitch mentioned, where they get to, practice getting in their suits, going out to launch pad, strap it into the vehicle. It's particularly important. In this case, we've got 3 rookies flying on this mission. Raja and Kayla and Matthias, it'll be their first time to space. 2 of them first astronauts of the class of 2017 that will be flying. And so that's just really, really exciting. Our commander, Raja, is one of those. You don't see many rookie commanders, and it's really just a testament to what an amazing person he is. Incredibly capable, as they all are, but he's in particular just done an outstanding job. They're doing great. They're really excited. They were able today to do a wave across, where they go outside and stand an appropriate distance from everyone else, but are able to see their friends and family and wave to them. And that's a really great event for everyone. And in these, COVID times that we're in, we were able to do that today. It was a great day here locally with the weather, and it provided a wonderful opportunity for all of the close friends and the families of the crew members and the crew members themselves. So they're doing really great. The team, we just completed the LRR, as was mentioned. That's one of the final milestones for our Big One team. The Falcon 9, the Dragon, SpaceX teams, the ISS, CCP, NASA teams, and we all come together to make sure that we can get our crew safely to space. So we're really excited about it. We think we've got the final I's dotted and the T's crossed, a couple more meetings ahead of us, and then we'll be ready to go. So with that, I will hand it over to Sarah.
Okay, thanks, Holly. Well, you've already heard a lot of the details. On Sunday, we launched Raja, Tom, Kayla, and Matthias to space, and we're about a week away from returning our Crew-2 astronauts, Shane, Megan, Aki, and Thomas, safely back home to Earth and to their families. We're obviously keeping a close eye on the weather, not just at the pad, but all the way along the ascent corridor up the eastern seaboard and across the Atlantic until Dragon gets safely to orbit. Right now it's marginal, but we'll get the latest from the weather officer here in a few minutes. I think they'll actually be focused on pad weather, but the NASA and SpaceX teams will be meeting shortly here in an hour or two to discuss the latest on the weather all the way up the ascent track. So we're keeping a close eye, and we're eagerly hoping that we get a chance to launch on Sunday. So the Crew-3 mission marks SpaceX's 5th human spaceflight mission and our 4th to the International Space Station for NASA. As of last month, SpaceX had safely flown 14 people to space in 16 months, 10 of which were on missions to the International Space Station. Human spaceflight is core to SpaceX's ultimate mission, so I'm really proud of the team for all they've accomplished in the last couple of years. Once the Crew-3 mission docks, as you know, there will be a short handover between the 2 crews. Steve mentioned this as well, and then the Crew-2 crew will return to Earth in early November. When that vehicle returns, the Dragon spacecraft that carried them to and from the space station will have been in space continuously for more than 195 days since it launched back in April. That makes it the first U.S. vehicle to reach that milestone. And this vehicle also carried Bob and Doug on the 63-day Demo 2 mission last year. And so this vehicle's actually clocked over 250 days in space since we finished designing and building it early last year. So Holly mentioned that this is the first spaceflight for 3 of the 4 crew members, Raja, Matthias, and Kayla. It's an honor to have Dragon be the vehicle that takes them on their first spaceflight. And I think I heard that this is actually Kayla's first time to even see a rocket launch, and she'll be watching it from on top out the window, which is really incredible. it's also a really cool fact that these 3 astronauts will help the world cross that 600-person threshold for total number of people to have been in space. So there are 599th, 600th, and 601st human beings to go to space. So as always, we work really closely together with NASA to ensure all the teams and the hardware are ready to fly. Steve talked about the series of readiness reviews, tons of tests ahead of flight that we've been doing over the weeks and months that we've just come through here. It gives us a chance to step back and review the data, listen to the hardware, and mitigate any risks for a safe flight. So the last of those was the launch readiness review that we just finished moments ago, and in a few hours we'll have a final operational tag up prior to stepping into launch operations, and as I mentioned, the weather briefs. So I think I'd just like to conclude with saying that we're really grateful for the opportunity to fly NASA and ESA astronauts. Thank you for your trust in us, and thank you to the 45th Space Wing for your support in launch and recovery operations. We're looking forward to a really great mission.
And next we'll go to Frank.
Yes, good evening, everybody. As ESA, we are, of course, very happy that Matthias as well can fly on Dragon to space for his first mission, and that he will encounter Thomas, who is currently the commander of the ISS, on orbit. It's kind of unique because after Matthias, we will also have Samantha flying to space, and we will have 3 back-to-back missions of ESA astronauts to the International Space Station. So this is a first for ESA that for 1.5 years in a row we will be permanently on orbit. We will also be able to do a lot of science thanks to the U.S. commercial crew vehicles. We have now 7 crew on orbit. It was mentioned already, we have plenty of crew time now to do science, and this is for ESA kind of a golden age to conclude our scientific program, that we have our European program as well, but also the programs of our partners, agencies like for Matthias, we have a big complement of science programs from DLR, our Deutsche Luft- und Raumfahrt Institute. We are also looking forward, of course, to continue this era of research in low Earth orbit, which is really supported by a big European scientific community. That's why in ESA we have also decided to extend the space station till 2030. Of course, we need to work with our international partners that we can all agree on this, but this is really one of the goals that we will have in our next ministerial conference that comes up in 2022. To that effect, also to enhance the science that we are doing on Columbus module in our part of the International Space Station, we are also starting a whole modernization program for the Columbus module on board the ISS. And last but not least, also to support all the flights that we hopefully will have till 2030. ESA has started an astronaut selection last year. We have more than 23,000 candidates in Europe that have applied for becoming an astronaut. So it also shows the enthusiasm that there is in European society today for our exploration programs to the ISS, but certainly also further to the Gateway and to the lunar surface. And with that, I'll hand it over to William.
Thank you, Frank. I'm happy to be here representing the Space Force's 45th Weather Squadron, and it goes without saying that we're honored to play a small but important part in the launch countdown. And once again, all eyes are on the weather, but for a slightly different reason this time, is we're expecting fantastic conditions here at Cape Canaveral. So let's talk about the weather, and the good news first. For those who are here, located in Central Florida, you probably noticed that we had a cold front move through the area Thursday night, and since then we've seen the atmosphere gradually dry out. But there's just enough low-level moisture to help trigger a few showers out there this evening, and that's expected to continue through Saturday morning. But we expect even drier air to move into the region Saturday night and early Sunday morning, so launch conditions are looking really, really nice for the instantaneous launch window Sunday morning. And that's been reflected in our latest launch forecast that my colleague Arlena Moses just issued. It highlights a 90% chance for favorable weather, as we expect partly cloudy skies and light offshore flow. But it is important to note that the launch mission execution forecast that we issue covers the probability of violating one of those 10 Lightning launch commit criteria that we evaluate for the Eastern Range to ensure launch vehicle safety. In addition, we also incorporate a couple of user constraints in the forecast, like surface wind speeds and flight through precipitation. Ultimately, the forecast that we give is meant to convey the weather conditions locally and within the immediate flight path from LC-39A, or Launch Complex 39. But as Sarah just mentioned a little while ago, our partners at both NASA and SpaceX continue to monitor wind and sea conditions in what's known as the Ascent Corridor, which is offshore the east coast of the United States and stretches well into the North Atlantic. And should we not be able to launch on Sunday morning due to those unfavorable sea states, our next opportunity moves to the middle of next week. But the good news here is that the same high pressure that's expected to bring favorable weather conditions on Sunday morning are expected to linger through much of the upcoming week. So for Wednesday, November 3rd's launch attempt, we remain very optimistic with an 80% go for weather. I'll throw it back to Josh.
Thank you, William. And we'll now start our media question and answer portion. And our first question will go to Jackie Waddles at CNN.
Steve, can you talk a little bit more about what needs to happen with that craft in regards to the waste management system before it can return home?
Hey, Jackie, I think your first part of your question was cut off. If you wouldn't mind repeating it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned a little bit earlier, and this is for Steve or Sarah, that there were still some issues that might need to be addressed with Endeavour before it can return home with Crew-2. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that, and as well as if you have any updated information on, what happened with the research with corrosion on Crew Dragon in terms of the issue with the waste management system.
Yeah, I can address that one. So when as we talked on Monday, at the conclusion from the FRR, we had just a little bit more work to do on the structure, and Mr. Gerstenmaier talked about, using a borescope and finding a little bit of corrosion underneath the floor of the Dragon. And so what we really did is looked at that corrosion and looked at the various analysis of the structure for returning the vehicle, and both the SpaceX and NASA teams were able to look at what was present under the floor and conclude that there was really no issues with the structure for return, that vehicle is totally safe to return and enter, and so we're ready to go bring that vehicle home. And there's really no more work to do. We've completed all the work, all the analysis, all the coupons, all the testing that we need to do on the ground to ensure that it's good to bring the vehicle back. We don't really need the crew to do anything more in terms of inspections. We're just going to wait till we successfully launch the Crew-3 mission, get that vehicle docked to station. We'll let the crew do their handover for 4 or 5 days, and then when the weather is also right for bringing the Endeavour Crew-2 vehicle home, we'll bring it home, undock and bring it home.
And our next question will come from Marcia Dunn at the Associated Press.
Hi, good evening. Again, for either Steve or Sarah. I have a question also about the returning Dragon crew. Will they be allowed to use the toilet in their capsule once they undock from the space station? Will there be any restrictions? And did they attempt any repairs on it in order to try to plug the leak? Thanks.
Yeah, I can take that question. Or Sarah, if you want to answer it, go ahead.
Either way, yeah, we did work together with NASA to limit the system's use during the Crew-2 return downhill portion of the mission. And as mentioned, we went ahead and rolled in a design improvement that's been fully qualified and reviewed by NASA for the Crew-3 mission launching hopefully this weekend to make the system even more robust.
Could I just follow up? Limiting the use, can they use it at all, or like just one time? I just trying to get an idea of what happens if they have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, Marcia, our intent is to not use the system at all, right, for the return leg home, because of what we've seen with fluid. You know, Mr. Gerstenmaier talks about that fitting that was essentially loose, and so we don't intend to use that system at all. So, and we have other means to allow the crew to perform the functions they need to.
And our next question will come from Bill Harwood at CBS News.
Yeah, hi, thank you. For Steve or for Sarah, what does marginal mean in terms of the downrange weather? In other words, are you close to being within limits? Is it pretty far out? I mean, where does that stand in terms of what it actually means? Thanks.
Yeah, I think we'll find out in a few hours here, but the weather has been no-go for the last couple of days in some of our commit criteria for the downrange portion. Pad weather's looking great, and the ascent corridor has been trending better, and so we're just kind of waiting to see what may evolve, but it is, I would say no-go as of a few hours ago.
Well, if I can just follow real quick, but does that mean, are you no-go, but is it wave heights? Is it wind speeds? I mean, what are the max wave heights and wind speeds for a Falcon 9, a Crew Dragon coming home?
Yeah, Bill, really the concern right now is there's kind of a low pressure in the interior of the U.S., and it's causing circulation, and there's another low off the coast that's causing pretty high wind speeds in that area. We have wind limits essentially for how the capsule makes contact with the water, and the winds are over those limits. You know, the limits vary as a function of different places along the ground track and different angles, but you know, it's several knots over the limit right now, and in particular, what we look at the risk along the whole ground track, and certain areas we weight a little heavier than others, and one area is right around, if you were to have a Dragon escape around the staging area and where you would land there, those winds are a bit out of limits. Not really too much concern for precip or thunderstorms in the area. Those are other considerations. And then in terms of wave heights, it's more about the slope of the wave and how the vehicle contacts that slope of the wave. And those are within limits, but not within the winds that we have. So we're watching it very carefully, and we'll, come to a decision in the next 10 hours or so.
Thanks.
And our next question is from Joe Roulette at the New York Times.
Hey, thanks. Quick question for Steve or Sarah. Steve, you mentioned that the astronauts will have other means to use the restroom on Crew Dragon during their return. What are those other means? Again, for Steve or for Joel, what is the significance of doing an ISS fly around for that Crew-2 vehicle, and specifically what parts of the space station do you guys want the astronauts to take pictures of? Thanks.
Yeah, relative to the waste system, anytime the crew is suited, they use an undergarment in that suit, and it's a short mission coming home, so it's pretty typical to have an undergarment on, and they can use that on the way home. We are working to try to always minimize that time from undock to landing, and so that's what we'll do with this flight. And it's a backup for any flight, right? It was a backup on Space Shuttle. It was a backup on other flights. So, and was the second question for me about the fly around, or was it for Joel? So.
Anyone who wants to answer, Joel or Steve.
I can start, and then Steve, you can add. The fly around. Purpose of the fly around is to get some obviously exterior photography of the outside. We don't have any specific items that we're going to ask the crew to look at this time, and so, but it's an opportunity that we want to take advantage of and use the fly around to go ahead and grab some pictures, and then we'll go back and analyze that, and then see if there's anything there that requires some further investigation. But at this time, there's nothing specific, so just general photography is what we've asked the crew for.
Thanks.
And our next question will come from Stephen Clark at Spaceflight Now.
Thank you for taking my question. I think my question is probably for Sarah. Just wanted to get an idea of, how much contamination and corrosion SpaceX's team found in the Crew Dragon Resilience that came back from Inspiration 4, and is that an issue turning around that vehicle for the next mission? Thanks.
Hey, yeah. So that vehicle is looking great for the next mission. There's a couple things that really work to our advantage. One is that a lot of that metal is not coming in direct contact with any liquid because there's multiple layers of paint over the metal, and so that serves as a great blocking agent to any liquid. And then we observed that the liquid evaporates within just a couple days, and pretty much all corrosion arrests within a couple days. So that really limits the impact that we observed when we were doing all of our post-flight inspections, which is really good. So the teams have photo documented and processed all the areas, and they're proceeding with bringing those areas to spec for its next mission.
As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your phone. And our next question will be from Ken Kramer, Space Up Close.
Thanks for taking my question, and good luck to everybody. I think my question is probably for Steve Stish. Can you kind of pinpoint the area along the abort track that is the concern? Is it the whole trajectory, or is there a specific area that you're worried about? And I'm also wondering about why there is a multi-day gap. For the backup, you can launch every day, it seems like, but here, if we abort tomorrow, you've got a several-day gap. So I was curious about why that is. Thank you.
Yeah, I can take the question. In terms of the gap, we end up having a couple of days, November 1st and 2nd, that just aren't favorable for orbital mechanics. The station is not quite in the right place for the Dragon vehicle as it does its rendezvous maneuvers to get there. So we'll wait a couple of days, and the backup opportunity would be launching on November the 3rd at 1:10 Eastern. The area of weather, again, in the wintertime, the weather gets more complicated as we have these fronts come through. You have higher winds. But it's kind of really off the coast of the Carolinas and up a little bit north of there, up along the ground track that we're concerned about, and we're watching the winds and waves carefully. And the good news is if we can't launch on Sunday, it looks much better, much more favorable. The winds and sea states will die down a little bit as we head into Wednesday, and so we'll just watch it carefully, and we'll get a few more model runs in before we have to decide whether we proceed toward some operations on the vehicle. At about launch minus 8 hours or so, we start to pressurize some systems on the vehicle and take a little life out of those systems, and so we'll be able to make a decision prior to that.
And our next question is from Russell Pounds at Pacific Rim Media.
Hello, thanks for taking our questions. I'm calling from Alaska this evening, and I've got a question for Joel or Jennifer. What's the most interesting gee-whiz bit of science or materials development that may be most useful to us back here on Earth? Thanks.
So we have a variety of material science research that we're doing on ISS. It's kind of hard to pick one, but I'll highlight a couple really briefly. So from an exploration standpoint, we've done some research where we're looking at building almost like concrete type materials with materials like regolith at various G loads on ISS. So that's been a great material science one for our exploration. You had also asked about material science here on Earth. We actually have a collaboration going with ESA and the MSL for material science, and they completed processing recently of the first 6 samples of an investigation called SETSOL, which is seeking to understand physical properties that govern solidification in metal alloys. So ESA is going to be swapping the furnace inserts in the next couple of weeks and running some more samples on that. We also, kind of along those lines on materials, have the EML, which is our electromagnetic levitator, which allows us to take a look at samples on board, and that's a joint collaboration with NASA, ESA, and Russia. And so we're taking a look at zirconium platinum on that one for material sciences.
And our final question is from Amy Thompson at space.com.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. I think this is for Steve. So I was wondering if the launch doesn't happen on Sunday but happens on Wednesday, how does that affect the Crew-2 return? Thank you.
Yeah, if we were to end up launching on Wednesday, the launch time was 1:10 Eastern, and we would dock later that day. It's about a 22-hour rendezvous again. Around about 11 p.m. Eastern would be docking, and then we would preserve that handover time, that 4 to 5 days, and so we would have to go look out for dock and landing opportunities for Crew-2 and undock a few days later than what we were planning. I think the first date we would be targeting would be the 7th, if I remember correctly. The 6th does not have any favorable landing opportunities.
And that's going to wrap things up for us here. NASA's SpaceX Crew-3 mission is targeting a launch to the International Space Station at 2:21 on Sunday, October 31st. We'll have live coverage beginning at 10 p.m. on Saturday, October 30th, and then we'll continue our broadcast through docking, hatch opening, and the welcome ceremony on November 1st. Thanks, and have a good evening.
Thank you for your participation in today's conference. You may now disconnect at this time.